It's a different color than New Mexico.
It certainly is. That's called Verde, isn't it?
Verde lindo.
Nice. Very nice.
Yeah, and I wish I could send you the fragrance over the computer.
Well, I can imagine. And like I said, we are on YouTube now, so anyone in the public can tune in. So I obviously behave well on YouTube. Anna, thank you very much for your help. Okay.
So, Mr. Lennon, I submitted my exhibits,
Right.
and I guess are you able to turn those over to the court reporter?
Yes, but you didn't label them at all, right? I didn't ask you to. That's fine. The truth is, I usually do not like them labeled. You might have saw a little talk about that with people that have appeared before me before, because you never know how they're going to be introduced, in what order, and even whether or not they're going to be admitted into evidence. And what happens is when I review the evidence, I end up with exhibit numbers like that go in this sequence: 1, 5, 9, 13. And I wonder whether I'm missing number 12 and number 11. So what I do is I label them as they're admitted. But if there ever was an exception to the rule, that procedural rule, this might be the exception, because as far as I can see, there's only 5 exhibits, 4 testimonies, and I believe New Mexico Water wants to introduce the actual application. So that makes 5, and that's pretty easy to keep track of, and I don't think I'll have any of those problems. So when I was asked if they could be labeled in advance, I said, sure, go ahead, no problem. And the fact that yours isn't stamped, Valencia Mesa #1 doesn't make any difference. When you move to admit it, which you're probably going to do, I am going to simply write that on it and ask that everyone else do exactly the same. No big deal.
Excellent. I tried to cover all the bases with technical glitch, and I appreciate you making me aware that there are phone numbers that I can call into a Zoom meeting. So I tested that from my landline. There wasn't a meeting to join, but I tested it, and it said just log in your passcode or your participant ID. So I'm believing that the number for the meeting ID is 867. I don't know if you have that in front of you.
I don't have it in front of me. I could bring it up on my screen with a few clicks, but whatever it says on that meeting invitation, let's see. Okay, so it's 867-4814-2761, passcode 187354. And you can dial any of those numbers, is my understanding. They give a bunch of alternatives, but it doesn't matter which one you call.
Well, I clicked on, and they have them for all over the world, and they have one for Costa Rica. So
No
I
kidding.
have to have a lot of respect for Zoom to have their system that user friendly.
Well, the state of New Mexico pays them, as I'm sure other people do, for an enhanced service above what the typical consumer doesn't pay for. And I'm sure they're making money somehow, and they want to keep the quality up, because there is some competition. There's this Microsoft version of it, and there's even another one I learned of this past week. I can't remember the name of it. So there's at least 3 formats. Okay, there's Miss Gonzalez. She's the court reporter. Let's see, it's only 9:42, or we've got another 18 minutes. I can't start the hearing early. Well, I guess, no, I can't start it even if everybody showed up early, because the public may want to tune in. And I always keep that in mind. Hi, Miss Gonzalez, are you there? There you are. Can't hear you yet.
That would be why.
Hey, how are you doing?
I'm doing just fine. Let me change my name. I'm showing my husband
Mark.
there. Yep. My better half. Let's see.
I have one of those too. You know, it's not just a figure of speech.
No, it's true.
Matter of fact, I keep her right up there, but I know you can't see her through the
Yeah.
Zoom.
He's next door. He works with me.
That's nice. Where are you? Are you in?
I'm in Phoenix.
Wow, that's like really southern New Mexico, isn't it?
Yeah.
Phoenix. You have a
Yeah.
great musical instrument museum there. Have you been?
No, I didn't know there was.
Called the MIM. It's on the northeast side of town, like way out in the middle of almost nowhere, but it's a great museum. If you ever get a chance, I've been there one day. I spent the entire day there, but I'm thinking about driving back just to go to the museum and
Are
go
you-
with
Are you a musician?
I am a musician, actually.
What do you
Yeah.
play?
Well, we're on YouTube, by the way, so
Cool.
I don't want to get too personal. Right now, we're on YouTube, you and I, and Mr.
Yes, I
Mr. Wilson.
understand.
Me too.
There's Mr. Wilson. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't introduce you. Ms. Gonsalves is
Hi.
the reporter.
I'm Franklin Wilson. I'm Valencia, Mesa.
Yes. Pleased to meet you both.
Pleasure.
Well, I funded my college, grad school, and law school in the first 5 years of the practice of law by playing professional music full time. And that's no small accomplishment when you
No.
work till 2 a.m, and then have to be in court or have to show up for a 9 o'clock class. So I'm proud of that.
Yes.
That's a long time ago.
That's great. I enjoy, I play guitar and flute and marimba, congos.
No kidding. Wonderful.
You know, when you play that many different instruments, you're not good at any of them.
I play no
Are you
instrument.
talking about me? That's not very nice.
No. I'm talking about myself.
Yeah, I started out as an accordionist. My parents, started me at 5 years of age, and I quit accordion, I guess about 13 or 14. And by 15 years of age, I was actually playing in, there's no better word than bars, B-A-R-S, the bars in Baltimore at 15 years of age, which is quite a revelation to a 15-year-old to see what adults do. And it was interesting. It was quite interesting. I grew up pretty quick. So it's 9:46. We've got 14 minutes or so. I was telling Mr. Wilson, because we're YouTube and there's an announcement that the public can tune in. Even if everyone showed up early, I can't really start early. So we'll start at 10, no earlier. And if everyone's here, we'll even start a little bit. I mean, if we're missing somebody, we'll start a little bit later. There's not going to be many people at this hearing. We have two lawyers, and then there's me. There's Ms. Gonsalves, and then we have 4 witnesses. So that's a relatively small hearing. I've been doing them with many parties, and I'm looking forward to this relatively small hearing and Zoom hearing. We get a smile from Ms. Gonsalves as well.
Well, at least there's enough attorneys to have a good argument if you want one.
Oh, okay.
I'm just
Well,
kidding.
A good
I don't
argument.
think, yeah. If it
Legally
doesn't upset
speaking.
the,
Yes, sir.
if it doesn't upset the process that you have in mind for alignment, I'm always nervous about a technical glitch because we've lost the power one time already today, being in Costa Rica. So I don't know where you have me in the sequence or the order, or where you would like my testimony.
Well, here's how it usually works. I like the applicant to present their evidence first. And in this case, there's a joint applicant, so it gets a little bit tricky. Because you're a pro se witness, well, you're a pro se party, actually. And
Yes,
today
sir.
you're a pro se witness as well. Since I presumed that you didn't have experience, I was going to let Miss O'Brien present her witness first. And you have an opportunity to observe, and then you could similarly present your evidence after having seen her done it just a few minutes before. So that was my game plan, and I think I'll stick to that. It's not really rocket science. I'm not allowed to advocate for you, and I'm not allowed to really help you very much, but I will procedurally direct you through the presentation of your evidence if I think it is appropriate. Like I said, we are on YouTube right now, but I want to, basically, the hearing is to allow cross-examination of you, frankly, Mr. Wilson, and for you to admit into the official record as evidence your direct testimony, which in these types of hearings is required to be pre-filed. In a normal court proceeding, there's what we call direct testimony, and the witness is sworn in, and they are examined typically by their own lawyer, and then they allow cross-examination. In these cases, the direct testimony is pre-filed, as you know, and you've done that already, but you still have to subject yourself to cross-examination. This is to allow due process for all parties. We don't allow what's called friendly examination. That's to support the requirement that all testimony be directly filed in advance. Because there's a joint application, I won't allow Miss O'Brien to directly examine you. And I can't imagine she's going to cross-examine you. As you've read the directly filed testimony of the staff, which is already has been filed and it's public record, I don't anticipate much cross-examination either. I can ask you, I think, yeah, even though we haven't started, do you anticipate any cross-examination of staff's witnesses?
I do not.
Okay, good. I didn't think so, but I thought I'd ask you. Cross-examination is usually to impeach the veracity of the witnesses or to attack the reliability of the testimony, and their testimony is relatively consistent with your position. So except for the conditions they mentioned, I couldn't imagine you would be cross-examining them. Hi, Miss Apodaca, can you hear me?
Good morning. Yes, I can. Good morning.
Good morning. I can see you. It looks like you're very stoic.
Hold on. I can start my video.
Okay. Yeah, there you are. That's actually much better. You look good, and that's good to know because this is an opportunity to make sure everything works. Mr. Wilson is here, as you can see. Ms. Gonsalves is our court reporter. I saw, believe it or not, every time you check in on YouTube, I get an email. I don't know if you know that.
Oh, okay.
So I see that you checked in a few times already this morning, and that's great. How are you?
Good, good.
Are you here at Bochum?
I'm sorry?
Are you here at Bochum?
At Bochum, I'm sorry.
The Bochum building, where are you?
Oh, no, I'm in my office in Rio Communities.
Okay, sounds good. We're all early. We've got about 8 minutes before the official start time, so we're waiting on a few other people. Counsel for New Mexico, Miss O'Brien, Mr. Black for staff, and Mr. Martinez and Miss Alicia Labia. I always say this wrong. Labia Tercero. Have you talked to her today? Any chance? No. Miss Apodaca?
No.
Or no? Okay. What I like to do, by the way, we're on YouTube. I should tell you, Miss Apodaca. So just keep that in mind.
Okay.
I'll say hello. I'll say hello to Cynthia. Hi.
Hi, Franklin. This is the first time we've actually seen each other.
Had a visual.
Yeah. Nice to see you. Are you in out of country today?
Right out there.
Oh, nice. Very nice.
The weather here in Santa Fe was really wild this morning, about 6 a.m. there's a tree outside and the tree was banging against the side of my house. It woke me up. It was like someone was hitting my front door with a sledgehammer, and just some brutal, brutal wind. And there, a bunch of hail started coming down. And then it hits those skylights on the house and it feels like the end of the world. So we had about an inch of hail outside this morning.
Are you going to get some snow today?
Well, there was 1 inch of new snow on the mountain. But in town, it's all bright and sunny here, so it'll probably warm up and we won't get any snow. Hi, Miss O'Brien, how are you?
Good morning, Mr. Hearing Examiner. I'm well.
Good. We got video on you and audio on you, so that's good. We are already on YouTube. Mr. Wilson checked in way early. Miss Apodaca checked in a few times, and then finally, while we were online, Miss Gonsalves is with us as our court reporter. I anticipate a relatively simple and easy hearing, but we'll see where it goes. They go where they go. There has been some discussion before you came on board. There was nothing about the merits of the case. I discussed with Mr. Wilson that he's a pro se litigant, and it's not my role to present his case, that kind of thing. And that's about it. So we're waiting for Mr. Black and Ms. Leba Tesero and Mr. Martinez.
Great.
Where are you, Miss O'Brien? I'm just curious.
I'm in my office in Albuquerque.
Sounds good.
Yeah,
Mr. Wilson is down there. Well, you probably know he's in Costa Rica.
I know. I wish I were down there too. It's a great.
It's an international Zoom meeting. How exciting is that?
We had Maria and I had an exchange, and as I understand, you've been to Costa Rica before.
I have not. Yeah, I really would like to go back. It was kind of just dipping our toe in the water, but yeah, we're there for a couple weeks and tried to see, even though it's a small country, as you know, there's a lot to see and it's actually pretty diverse.
Well, I'm going to drive to my friends today after the meeting. It's 100 kilometers. It's about 70 miles away, and it'll take close to 3 hours to get there.
Wow.
Look,
Yeah, we
that's
experienced
if I don't get behind a truck or a tractor moving produce along the highway.
Mhm. Let me test Miss Alicia's connection. Alicia Lebatissero, can you hear me? And if so, please, there you are. Okay.
Yes, I can hear you.
Hi, we just wanted to make sure we got a good connection before we start in about 4 minutes. Good to see you. Good, glad you're here. Let's see, there's Mr. Black. How you doing, Mr. Black? Unmute.
I'm fine, thank you.
Great, great. That's what I wanted to hear. Just wanted to make sure we could all see each other. Mr. Martinez, is he going to be appearing today?
Yes, I expect him to be appearing.
Okay, so we got another, let's see, what is my clock? This is supposed to be the most accurate one. So 9:55, we've got 5 minutes. You didn't miss much. Mr. Franklin Wilson and myself have been online for about 20 minutes or so here. We haven't discussed any merits of the case whatsoever. We discussed a few procedural things, namely that he's a pro se litigant and the order of presentation. And I told him that I was expecting the applicant to present their case first. And since there's joint applicants, the choice would go to New Mexico Water Service Company because Mr. Wilson, the pro se litigant, would have an opportunity to see how Miss O'Brien presents her witness. That's about all we've discussed so far. Just to bring you up to date. And Ms. Gonsalves has been patiently waiting.
I did mention that the power went out one time today for less than a minute, which kills my internet connection, but I'm set up with a couple of alternatives.
Okay. I don't like to waste time. There he is, Mr. Martinez. Mr. Martinez, yeah, let's check your video and audio. And then I think that would be everyone that I expect. And we'll talk about some Zoom protocol, which is, hi, Mr. Martinez, how are you?
Good. How are you doing today?
Great, thank you. I have both audio and video on everybody. Ms. Apodaca stepped away. Does anybody know of anyone else that we expect for this hearing? No, I don't think so. I think this is it. Okay, so we're still scheduled to start in 3 minutes, but we won't start early because we're being streamed on YouTube and there's a notice to the public, and the public, if they want to hear this hearing or attend the hearing, I can't start early because they might check in just at 10 a.m. But I can discuss some procedural stuff. You guys all looked really experienced. So as we do these Zooms over the last year and a half, this is not really as necessary as it used to be a year ago. But when you're not testifying or speaking, it's good to keep the mute off. Because Ms. Gonsalves, as efficient as she is, it's really hard for a court reporter to hear two people talking at once. So don't talk over another person. Wait maybe 1 second until you hear the end of the last person talking before you start talking. That's a courtesy to Ms. Gonsalves. If I should lose you, in other words, the internet connection, what I normally do is go off the record and take a minute. Sometimes it just takes a minute, maybe 2 minutes, and give you an opportunity to reconnect. It does happen. Mr. Wilson is actually in Costa Rica. He said he lost internet because he lost electricity for a minute or so today. So if we lose him, we'll take a short recess for a minute or two and see if he can reconnect. If he can't reconnect, he'll call by telephone, and actually anybody could call in by telephone. I strongly prefer video because I think it gives us all a sense of an actual hearing rather than just all having a conference call on the telephone. I expect this to be a relatively simple hearing. I expect that we will conclude. Well, I don't like to predict, but I think I can conservatively predict it will be concluded by lunchtime. I don't expect any lunch break, and I don't even expect any break. Ms. Gonsalves, I usually take breaks like once an hour for 5 or 10 minutes, but I'm going to try to just get right through this one with your permission. Thank you, Ms. Gonsalves.
Mr. Hearing Examiner.
Yes, sir.
What is that telephone number were circumstances to present that we would have to use that?
Okay, hold on just a second. I'll take a look at it's on the Zoom notice. The telephone number, well, locally here, you have a choice of them, actually. There's a whole list of them on the Zoom notice. Let's see, closest one would not be Washington, D.C., Chicago, or New York. It would probably be Houston, and that's area code 346-248-7799. And write down the meeting ID, which is 867-4814-2761. And the passcode is 187354. And that would connect you audio only. I do these hearings from my office now. I did them from my home for about a year and a half. And then I did actually had a connection problem a few weeks ago. And that was so disturbing, I decided I'm not going to do them from my home anymore, and I'm going to come into the office. So we have a pretty strong service here at the office. So welcome back, Mr. Wilson. Once we begin the hearing, I'd appreciate it everybody remain at the hearing, just as if we were in a hearing room, unless you want to be, unless you need to be excused, remain with the hearing. So we will go on the record shortly, unless there's anything else, you guys, and you're welcome to present something that we could discuss off the record, anything other than the merits of the case. Is there anything anyone would like to discuss off the record? Ms. O'Brien? I usually defer to counsel instead of witnesses.
Sure, of course, Mr. Hearing Examiner. I can't think of anything right now. I mean, there's some housekeeping matters, but I think maybe on the record, one of the housekeeping matters was just how we want to get exhibits to the court reporter. I know Mr. Black and I both and Mr. Wilson emailed out the exhibits we proposed to present at the hearing are pretty limited. I think there's a total of 4. If I'm counting correctly, 5, excuse me. But we can deal with that on the record, or if we wanted to email.
Well, I think that's appropriate off the record. So that's a great question. I sent her what was sent to me, and I believe
Okay.
everything that's been filed, there's 4.
Okay.
Yeah, there's, I got them in my hand, basically. I have Mr. Martinez's testimony, Ms. Leba Tercero's testimony, Mr. Wilson's testimony, Ms. Apodaca's testimony, and then I believe you want to move to admission of the initial application. So that's the extent of the exhibits. Am I missing anything, Ms. O'Brien, that you know of?
No, that's the universe as far as I understand it, unless Mr. Wilson or Mr. Black feel that's just something off that list. But thank you. That basically answers my question. They have been sent to the court reporter.
Mr. Black waved his head no. Nothing else, Mr. Black? Okay, great. And Mr. Wilson's is the only one that is not labeled, but I don't mind that. Actually, I usually don't label them because I don't label them. I don't like any breaks in the exhibit numbers. Drives me nuts when I review the file and I have a 1, 2, 3, 9, 7, 9, 11, 14, and I wonder whether I'm missing something.
Sure.
So
we send you both. we send you both options. But I think Mr. Black had sent staffs numbered, and I thought, given the straightforwardness of this case and the limited number of exhibits, that pre-numbering. So we certainly, if for some reason an exhibit is not admitted, we certainly will work with staff and Mr. Wilson to address that.
okay. I have a comment, and Mr. Wilson, you're a party, so I should ask you, that's the extent of your exhibits, right? Your testimony? Okay, thank you, Mr. Wilson. You'll hear me say stuff like, for the record, Mr. Wilson is indicating affirmatively by nodding his head forward. If you hear something weird like that, that's because I'm the nature of a YouTube meeting. The nature of a Zoom hearing being conducted by Zoom meeting. I had to get that straight. And I'm just notating that so that it becomes part of the record. Eventually, we'll let Ms. Gonzalez start her job, and we'll be on the record. At that point, she records every mumble, so to speak, and every nuance of every word. That's her job. And that's why you'll hear me even sound a bit more methodical as we begin the hearing. And that's a reason to speak prior to being on the record, because it's easier to talk. We're still not on the record. Is there anything else we'd like to discuss, Ms. O'Brien or Mr. Black? No? And Mr. Wilson? No? Okay, well, that being said.
Oh, I have one question.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you want me to swear in the witnesses? Or
I
do you
do, if
swear
you
them
don't-
in?
I
No,
do it
I
both
will.
ways, but you can do that for me. I'd appreciate that.
Sure, it's not a problem. When we're ready, we could do that.
Okay, and we can let's do them one at a time as they take the witness stand, so to speak. There's another way, of course, collectively they could be sworn in, but let's do it the other way.
Sure.
Okay, let's go on the record, Ms. Gonzalez. We are now on the record. Good morning, everyone. It is 10:05 a.m. It is December 15th, 2021. My name is Robert Lennon, Lennon, Lennon. I am a hearing examiner for the New Mexico Public Regulation Commission. We are here on case number 21-00041-UT. I'm going to read the caption because it accurately describes the nature of the case. In the matter of the joint application of Valencia Mesa LLC and New Mexico Water Service Company for the several approvals and authorizations required in connection with acquisition of Valencia Mesa LLC's assets by New Mexico Water Service Company and the application by New Mexico Water Service Company for approval to operate certain water utility facilities. Like I said, that pretty much accurately describes it. This is an acquisition by one utility of another utility. And the nature of those, part of the acquisition is what is called an abandonment in the parlance, if you will, of the utility regulation by the Public Regulation Commission. I want to do just a bit of an opening myself to set the stage and give a little history of us being here. And then I'm going to ask counsel and the pro se litigant to introduce themselves. And with that, I will allow an opening statement by counsel if they choose to do that. I don't anticipate it. And then we can move on to the presentation of witnesses, the introduction of evidence. We will allow cross-examination of the witnesses, cross-examination, and then I will allow the opportunity to do a closing, or we could discuss written closings, and then that should conclude the hearing. That's my anticipation. So let me do that brief opening. I'm doing the brief opening for, and I don't normally do this type of opening, but the nature of the proceedings in this case, I believe, but encourage me to do a brief opening here at the beginning of this hearing. Also, this is being streamed, if you will, broadcast live on YouTube for the public to attend. And I believe the public, it would be helpful to the public to set somewhat of a stage upon which this case is being presented. So let me do just that. I have some notes that I wrote down upon review of the file. A joint application, as mentioned when I read the caption, was filed on March 1st, 2021. And pardon me, a procedural order was issued on April 12th, 2021. In compliance, part of the procedural order was that a notice be filed. The notice was suggested by the joint applicants, and it was approved, and there was in fact a notice, and that is important in these proceedings. There was a notice of completion of the publication. In fact, a notice of the notice, the publication of the notice. That was filed on April 29th. An important part of the notice was that there be notice to the public that there is an intervention deadline. The intervention deadline included in that notice to the public was March 24th, 2021. Significantly, there were no interveners, no applications, no no motions to allow intervention. In other words, there was no one wanted to be an intervener. No one else wanted to participate in this case. So when that happens, the official parties of record are then extant or exist. So the official parties of record are what we have before us, staff, and of course the joint applicants. That's important because when this hearing was noticed in my procedural order of November 23rd of this year, official notice went out to all the official parties of records. I had already actually done a recommended decision in this case on August 20th, and I recommended approval of the application. The commission, however, on November 3rd, in an order, remanded the case back to the hearing examiner, me, and the specific instructions of the remand order were that, and I have quotes, this matter should be remanded to the hearing examiner to hold a hearing, unquote. And that's why we're here today, to hold that hearing. The commission interpreted the New Mexico Code 62-9-5 It's called Abandonment of Service. And in the middle of that paragraph, it states that the commission shall grant such permission and approval after notice and a hearing, So the commission ordered that a hearing was required, even though there were no interveners and even though there is no objection from the only other party in the case, staff. Staff did request some conditions, but other than that, there was no actual objection. So we're here to hold that hearing, and the hearing is to accept evidence and to allow cross-examination, and that's why we're here. Are there any questions in response to my brief opening remarks? Ms. O'Brien?
No, Mr. Hearing Examiner, I have nothing at this time.
Thank you. Any questions or comments, Mr. Black?
No, Your Honor.
And last but not least, the other party, Mr. Wilson.
No, sir.
Thank you. All right, well, then we are ready to proceed. I would allow in most hearings an opening statement. It's completely optional for the parties. It's not necessary. Ms. O'Brien, do you have any type of opening statement you'd like to make?
Mr. Hearing Examiner, for the record, Maria O'Brien, counsel for New Mexico Water Service Company. Throughout this hopefully short proceeding, we'll be referring to New Mexico Water Service Company as New Mexico Water, just to make it less of a mouthful. And we do not have I do not have an opening statement at this time. We think the filings and your procedural overview that you just gave kind of speak for themselves, and we're ready to proceed to present our witness, the general manager for New Mexico Water, Cynthia Apodaca.
Thank you, Ms. O'Brien. If it's convenient, if you could turn up your audio or move your mic closer, it might help me a little bit. I found myself leaning forward to hear you. Mr. Black, any opening statement or comment?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Hearing Examiner. My name's David Black, and I'm an attorney in the legal division for the New Mexico Public Regulation Commission. And I represent two members of staff who are participating in this hearing this morning. The first is an engineer in the Gas, Water, and Wastewater Bureau in the Utilities, in the Commission's Utility Division, excuse me, and that is Timothy A. Martinez. And my other client in this case is the Economics Bureau Chief in the Utility Division of the Commission, of the Public Regulation Commission, and that is Alicia C. hyphenated, this last name is hyphenated, Leyva Tercero. And I'm making my, entering my appearance on behalf of staff.
Thank you, Mr. Black. Mr. Wilson, you have an opportunity, if you like, to make an opening statement.
I'll introduce myself as Franklin Wilson. I'm here as representing Valencia Mesa LLC, which I'm the sole member, and that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. I just thought of something. I have a comment. Mr. Wilson, you're wearing two hats today. You are your own lawyer, and there's a distinction between testimony and the lawyer language. And what you've just done is the lawyer talking. It's not testimony at this point. I just wanted to bring you to be aware of the distinction in the two roles and the two hats you're wearing today. At some point, you're probably going to be sworn in, and at that point, you would be testifying. Okay, so Ms. O'Brien, there are joint applicants. As a matter of being practical, it's up to you and Mr. Wilson to decide who goes first. I thought it made sense that you present your case first.
Yes, Mr. Hearing Examiner, I think that was the plan, if that's amenable to you and to staff.
Okay, so please call your first witness to be sworn in.
Yes, Mr. Hearing Examiner, New Mexico Water calls Cynthia Apodaca, the General Manager for New Mexico Water.
Ms. Gonsalves, please.
Raise your right hand, ma'am. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Ms. O'Brien, your witness.
Thank you. Can you please state and spell your name for the record?
Yes, my name is Cynthia, Cynthia, Apodaca, Apodaca.
And Ms. Apodaca, what is your relationship to and your role at New Mexico Water, one of the co-applicants in this case?
I am currently the general manager for New Mexico Water. I've been employed by New Mexico Water for a few days over 26 years. Spent most of that time as the controller, but 2.5 years ago was named as the general manager.
And Ms. Apodaca, you should have in front of you what has been proposed as New Mexico Water Exhibit 1. It is called application, and the application and utility case number 21-00041 UT. Do you have that?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Ms. Apodaca, was this application prepared by New Mexico Water with input and supervised by you?
Yes, it was.
And was it prepared in cooperation with Valencia Mesa LLC, the co-applicant in this matter?
Yes.
Mr. Hearing Examiner, with that testimony regarding New Mexico Water proposed Exhibit 1, we would request that the application in this matter be admitted as New Mexico Water Exhibit 1.
Thank you, Ms. O'Brien. Let's find out if there's any objections. Mr. Wilson, you're a joint applicant, so I presume you have no objection, but I'll ask you anyhow. No objection?
No objection.
Mr. Black, any objection?
No objection.
Okay, I have a printout of what I think is this exhibit in my hand. I just want to make sure I have everything. There's an attached Exhibit A to it, Ms. O'Brien. Is that correct?
That's correct. Mr. Hearing Examiner, we proposed the exhibit as it was filed, minus the supporting direct testimonies, which we're going to move as separate exhibits.
That's what I presumed. There's also an attached exhibit CA-1 and CA-2 and CA-3, right?
Let's see.
Sorry, I don't mean to.
Yeah,
cut
no,
you
it's
off guard
okay.
there.
Yes, it's all right. The one I have in front of me doesn't have those because I believe those are the direct testimonies that we're going to submit as separate as separate exhibits.
Okay, so the final page of your Exhibit 1 is there for your signature page dated this first day of March 2021? And the other?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Except with the exception of application Exhibit A, as you noted, which was a proposed form of notice.
Got it. So application Exhibit A.
Yes.
It's just practical for me. As you can see, I'm
Yes.
separating CA1 from the application,
Yeah.
which includes application Exhibit A.
That's-
All right,
that's
so there
correct.
being no objection, the document labeled New Mexico Water Exhibit 1 is thereby admitted, is now evidence in the case. Please proceed, Counselor.
Thank you, Mr. Hearing Examiner. Ms. Apodaca, you should also have in front of you what has been proposed and has been labeled as New Mexico Water Exhibit number 2. And it is the direct testimony of Cynthia Apodaca on behalf of New Mexico Water Service Company, utility case number 21-0041 UT. Do you have that in front of you?
Yes, I do.
Ms. Apodaca, is New Mexico Water Exhibit 2 the direct testimony you submitted in support of the application now admitted as New Mexico Water Exhibit 1?
Yes,
Was your direct testimony, was it prepared by you and or under your supervision and control?
yes,
And Ms. Apodaca, if I asked you the questions that are contained in your direct testimony today, would your answers be the same as that contained in your direct testimony?
yes, they would.
With that, Mr. Hearing Examiner, I would request that New Mexico Water Exhibit 2, the direct testimony of Cynthia Apodaca on behalf of New Mexico Water Service Company, be admitted as New Mexico Water Exhibit 2 in this case.
Thank you, Ms. O'Brien. Mr. Wilson, any objection?
No, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Black, any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
There being no objection, New Mexico Water Exhibit number 2, including Exhibit CA1 through CA3, is admitted into evidence. Ms. O'Brien, does that conclude your presentation today?
With one request for some guidance on how to most efficiently address this issue, Mr. Hearing Examiner. In this matter, as has already been put on the record, staff did submit direct testimony. New Mexico Water did not submit rebuttal testimony. After staff submission of direct testimony, the parties collectively, Valencia, Mesa, New Mexico Water, and staff submitted a joint motion to vacate all remaining deadlines and hearing and for approval of the application with conditions. And it was in the context of that motion that New Mexico Water provided a record that it did not object to the conditions proposed by staff in their direct testimony. So my question is whether be very easy by asking Ms. Apodaca a few questions to make the record that we would have made in essence in rebuttal testimony, which would have not been true rebuttal, but would have indicated that New Mexico Water agrees to the condition proposed by staff in their direct. So we're amenable to however Mr. Hearing Examiner and the parties think it's best to make that record. I did discuss this with Mr. Black about a week ago, and he indicated he didn't have objection to making a record through a couple of questions to Ms. Apodaca at this point while she is actually on the stand.
Okay, well, that's a really long question, and I'll try to keep the answer shorter and as clear as I can possibly make it. I see the commission's order for remand essentially, now let me make sure I say this correctly, as an order vacating my order vacating the hearing. I do not see where the commission, however, vacated the remainder of the order vacating the hearing, which basically abrogated the need for rebuttal testimony, however, or the opportunity for rebuttal testimony, and the agreement you had reached with staff at that point. So the only thing which the commission, not the only thing, but the thing the commission did was vacate the vacation of the hearing. So that's one point. My next point is there is, of course, a general rule that there shall not be direct testimony in these type of hearings, and direct testimony shall always be pre-filed and be pre-filed in writing. However, in this case, for example, since Mr. Wilson is a joint applicant, I would think that he would have no objection and to you doing so. In other words, examining the witness further. And the only other party would be staff. And if you say you've already talked with Mr. Black, and if Mr. Black has no objection to you asking a few questions, my only issue with it is the general rule that there be no friendly examination, no friendly direct examination of a witness, and that the direct examination only be pre-filed. So if Mr. Black can can agree to it, and he can waive any type of appealable error for breach of the normal commission rules, I'm fine with it. Mr. Black, any problem with her doing some direct examination?
I have no problem with that, and I believe it would be contribute to this the administrative efficiency of this case.
Well, I'm all about administrative efficiency, as you might know, so I'm there. So with that being said, not anticipating any objection or any type of reliance upon a breach of a rule for the basis for any type of appeal afterwards, I'm all for it. So Ms. O'Brien, please proceed and examine your witness.
Thank you, Mr. Hearing Examiner, and thank you, Mr. Wilson and Mr. Black. Oh, Ms. Apodaca, did you review the direct testimony of staff that was submitted in this case, specifically that of Timothy Martina and Alicia Leyva Tercero?
Yes, I did.
And did staff recommend approval of the application with conditions?
Yes.
Is that a yes, right?
Yes.
Okay, I didn't hear. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Ms. Apodaca, do you recall what those two conditions were?
One would be that the rates would be frozen for a year. And the second one, I believe, was that we would be filing the rate base that we would be recording from the transaction within a year.
I'm having a little bit of trouble hearing you, Ms. Apodaca. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
The second one was what?
That New Mexico Water would file the allocation of the purchase price and establishment of rate base within a year.
Thank you.
And Ms. Apodaca, does New Mexico Water agree to the conditions that staff proposed that you just articulated?
Yes, we do.
Mr. Hearing Examiner, I have no further questions.
Thank you, Ms. O'Brien, and I appreciate you clarifying and putting that evidence on the record. You know, since there's been now direct testimony, I'll offer the opportunity to cross-examine Mr. Black.
Thank you, Mr. Hearing Examiner. Ms. Apodaca, I'm referring to the joint motion to vacate all remaining deadlines and hearing and for approval of the application with conditions, which was filed in this case on July 12th, 2021. And in that document, are you familiar with that document?
Yes, I am.
Okay, thank you. At paragraph 3 of that motion, it states, staff's direct testimony supports approval of the application subject to 2 conditions. These conditions are that 1, NMWSC institute a quote rate freeze for a minimum of 1 year for bracket Valencia Mesa close bracket customers close quote following approval of the transfer, and 2, within 1 year after commission approval of the transfer, NMWSC file with the commission, quote, the rate base value of the assets NMWSC assigns, close quote, to the acquired Valencia Mesa assets. And it gives a reference to the direct testimony of my client, Timothy Martinez, at pages 3 and 10. Are you familiar with that paragraph?
Yes.
Does that, do those 2 items contained in that paragraph accurately restate what you had just testified to?
Yes.
Okay, I have no further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Black. And Mr. Wilson, although you're a joint applicant, since there's been additional direct testimony, I'm going to offer you the opportunity to cross-examine Ms. Apodaca? You need not, but you can.
I do not need to, Your Honor.
Thank you, sir. Okay, Ms. O'Brien, any other evidence to present?
Not at this time, Mr. Hearing Examiner. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. O'Brien. Then we'll move to the other applicant, the joint applicant, well, actually not Mr. Wilson, but it's actually his company, Valencia Mesa LLC. Mr. Wilson, you're going to be sworn in, and then I'd ask you to identify yourself and your relationship to that company. Ms. Gonsalves?
Raise your right hand, sir. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do indeed.
Thank you.
Mr. Wilson, as I said earlier, you just changed hats. Now you've gone from being the legal representative, and I don't mean lawyer representative, but I mean legal representative for Valencia Mesa LLC, and now you are the witness in this proceedings, and you're under oath. So it's really up to you to present your evidence however you choose to do so. You've seen how Ms. Apodaca's evidence was presented by Ms. O'Brien. I believe you have direct testimony, which was pre-filed, so I'll allow you to proceed at this point. Go ahead, Mr. Wilson.
Yes, my name is Franklin E. Wilson, and I am the sole member and therefore the managing member of Valencia Mesa LLC. And as part of this application, I have prepared direct testimony, and which is accurate, and I ask that that be entered into the record of this hearing.
Mr. Wilson, there's a bunch of questions, if you will, not a bunch, but there's questions in this direct testimony. If you were to answer these questions today, would your answers be the same as they are in the pre-filed testimony?
Yes, sir, indeed.
No changes?
None.
You also have, let's see, you have an exhibit attached, FEW number 1. Is that also part of your exhibit you're moving, that you're moving for admission?
Yes, it is, Your Honor.
Okay, so let's see if there's any objection. Ms. O'Brien, I anticipate no objection.
No objection.
Mr. Black, any objection?
No objection.
There being no objection, the direct testimony of Franklin E. Wilson on behalf of Valencia Mesa LLC, consisting of 12 pages of written direct testimony and 5 pages of an attached exhibit FEW-1 are thereby admitted into the record as evidence in this case. Mr. Wilson, I presume not, but do you have any other evidence to present in this hearing?
I do not, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Mr. Wilson, thereby resting, I believe we can move right on to the other party's staff's case. Are you ready, Mr. Black?
I am. Thank you, Your Honor.
Call your first witness.
I would like to call as my first witness, Timothy Martinez.
And he can be sworn, please, Ms. Gonsalves.
Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Mr. Black.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Martinez. How are you?
Doing good. Doing good. Good morning.
Good morning. For the record, would you please state your name and your position with the Public Regulation Commission?
My name is Timothy A. Martinez, and I am employed in the Engineering Bureau as an engineer with the Utility Division of the New Mexico Public Regulation Commission.
Thank you. Have you filed testimony in this case as shown in what's been pre-labeled as Staff Exhibit 1?
Yes, that is my direct testimony, and it was filed on June 29th, 2021.
Is there an appendix attached to that testimony? I'm looking at page 17.
He's on mute.
Mr. Martinez, you can remain unmuted at this point while you're testifying, please.
Yes, it is my Appendix A from which I list the cases that I have testified in.
Thank you. Was this testimony drafted by you or under your supervision?
Yes, it was.
Do you have any corrections to your testimony?
No, I do not.
If I were to ask you the same questions today that are posed in this testimony, would you give the same answers today under oath?
Yes, I would.
Is your testimony true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes, it is.
Mr. Hearing Examiner, I move that what has been marked as Staff Exhibit 1 be admitted into the record.
Any objection, Ms. O'Brien?
No objection.
Mr. Wilson, any objection?
No objection.
Thank you, and I appreciate you unmuting just for that, so that it is on the official record that Mr. Gonzalez is keeping. There being no objection thereby, the direct testimony of Timothy A. Martinez dated June 29, 2021 is admitted and is now part of the official record and is evidence in this case.
Thank you, Mr. Hearing Examiner. I tender Staff Witness Timothy Martinez for any questions.
Ms. O'Brien?
Mr. Hearing Examiner, I have no questions.
Thank you, Ms. O'Brien. Mr. Wilson, any questions for Mr. Martinez?
No questions of Mr. Martinez.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Next witness, this witness can be released. Thank you, Mr. Martinez. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mr. Black, next witness.
Thank you, Mr. Hearing Examiner. I would now like to call Alicia Leba Tercero.
Raise your right hand, Ms. Tessera, to be sworn in by Ms. Gonsalves.
Do you solemnly swear the testimony you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God.
Yes, I do.
Proceed.
Thank you. Good morning, Ms. Leba Tercero. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Thank you. For the record, would you please state your name and position with the Public Regulation Commission?
My name is Alicia C. Leba Tercero, and I'm the Economics Bureau Chief in the Utility Division of the New Mexico Public Regulation Commission.
Thank you. Have you filed testimony in this case as shown as pre-labeled Staff Exhibit 2?
Yes, I have. That's my direct testimony filed in this case on June 29th, 2021.
Thank you. Was the testimony drafted by you or under your supervision?
Yes, it was.
Do you have any corrections to your testimony?
No, I do not.
If I were to ask you the same questions today that are posed in your testimony, would you give the same answers today under oath?
Yes.
Is your testimony true and accurate to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes, it is.
Mr. Hearing Examiner, I move what has been marked as Staff Exhibit 2 into the record.
Thank you, Mr. Black. Is there any objection, Ms. O'Brien?
No objection.
Mr. Wilson?
No objection.
I have just a question, Ms. Leba Tercero, your testimony, the exhibit includes something labeled as Exhibit ELT1 and also another document ELT2. Is that correct?
Yes.
And Mr. Black, you're moving it in as one package, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
No objection, Ms. O'Brien,
No objection.
and no objection, Mr. Wilson.
No objection.
Thank you. There being no objection, then the prepared direct testimony of Alicia C. Leba Tercero dated June 29, 2021 is admitted into the record. It is evidence in this case. Is there any other evidence, Mr. Black?
No other evidence, Your Honor.
Okay, I believe we've heard from both joint applicants. We've heard from the only other party in this case, staff. Are there any other parties known that would be presenting evidence in this case?
I am not aware of any other.
Okay, I should have mentioned something before we started there. The public has a right to comment at these hearings. They normally contact me or our office here, Ms. Kippenbrock, and there's been no notification that the public chose to make any comments. Comments are not evidence and they would not be considered in the determination of the case. I just want to state that for the record, that it has not been forgotten, that it was noted, and there was no members of the public that wished to make any such comments. That being said, I sometimes have, well, there can be written post-hearing briefs. There can also be post-hearing summations from counsel, basically closing arguments, and neither of them are required, but I do allow the parties through counsel to present such a closing. I don't think it's necessary in this case, but despite what I think, you certainly have a right to do so. Ms. O'Brien, would you like to make a post-hearing closing, either in writing or orally?
No, Mr. Hearing Examiner, New Mexico Water has nothing further at this time. We would note that we had submitted, along with staff in Valencia, Mesa, on July 30th, 2021, a joint proposed recommended decision, which I believe contains, if we were today, if we didn't have the record we did, if we were today to make closing arguments, it would, in essence, state what had been agreed to by the co-applicants and staff regarding the approval of the application. So I just, for the record, refer to that filing in July of this year.
Thank you, Mr. O'Brien. Before I ask Mr. Black or Mr. Wilson whether they have any closings, I think it would be helpful if I mentioned that it is my intention to file a supplement to my previous RD to document, was part of the documentation, that we have complied with the commission's order to hold a hearing in compliance with the statute. Other than that, to accept testimony, to admit evidence. Other than that, nothing has changed in my recommendation, which was incorporated the parties jointly submitted recommendation, which I adopted into mine. So not much has changed in that regard. We are simply complying with the commission's order to have a hearing in compliance with the statute. Okay, so that being said, I'll hear from the other joint applicant, Mr. Wilson. Any closing in writing or orally today?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Mr. Black.
Thank you, Mr. Hearing Examiner. Staff believes that it is in the public interest to approve the application. Staff, however, recommends the commission's approval be conditioned on the following two conditions. One, that New Mexico Water institute a rate freeze for a minimum of 1 year for Valencia Mesa customers following approval of the transfer. And two, within 1 year after commission approval of the transfer, New Mexico Water file with the commission the rate base value of the assets New Mexico Water assigns to the acquired Valencia Mesa assets. These two conditions have been agreed to by the joint applicants. And with that, that concludes my summation.
Mr. Black, that's very succinct, and I appreciate that. I want to just make it clear that essentially no change, because we've heard that those two conditions are part of a demand of staff. We've heard testimony and have evidence now on the record that both parties agreed to those conditions. Well, that the joint applicants agreed to staff's two conditions. We've heard it from both sides, if you will. We've heard it from both the joint applicants, and that was incorporated into my previous recommendation, which is not going to be changed. So there's really no dispute. I appreciate you including that in your summation, but is it correct that there's no change?
That is correct.
Thank you, Mr. Black. Okay, so I believe that will allow us to adjourn this hearing. Is there any other comments that Miss O'Brien or Miss Wilson would like to make? Miss O'Brien?
I have nothing further, Mr. Hearing Examiner.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson, anything further?
Just to say thank you, and to all the parties, thank you for helping through this process.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Anything further, Mr. Black?
Nothing further other than joviality during this holiday season to all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Black. It is now 10:47 a.m. on the same day, December 15, 2021. There's no further business in this hearing, and the hearing is now adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gonsalves, and thank you, everyone.
You're welcome.
This was an interesting hearing, slightly different than most, and nice and short and sweet. And thank you all for being here. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hearing.
Bye, everyone.